Ming, thank you very much for joining us. For everybody who's not aware, Ming is the founder and the chief designer of Ming Watches, a fabulous watch company out of Malaysia. Ming, can you tell us a little bit about your brand? Like, you guys have really taken huge steps over the last, how long have you been around for? Less than a decade, right?
Well, it's 5 years actually. This year was our fifth
Wow,
anniversary.
okay.
So we started off as a bunch of six enthusiasts thinking, of course, very arrogantly that we could change the world and do all that good stuff. But the reality is that it boiled down to we wanted to make watches that got us excited about collecting again, and demonstrated that we could do demonstrated it was possible to do enthusiast-driven value at all price points. And that's not to say that it's cheap necessarily, but it's to say that we give you a lot for what the watch costs. And at the same time, we want to do things that were interesting, visually different, different from a design point of view. Didn't really fit any category in the sense that they're gender neutral, they're sort of genre neutral. They go with whatever clothes you tend to wear. And also at the same time, they're accessible, at least as accessible as we could make them. And we continue to try and make them as accessible as possible. But ultimately, I think it boils down to we just wanted to make the kind of watches that we like, that we wanted to wear, and that still got us excited about the whole thing. And that started off with some fairly simple time-only pieces, and it's kind of escalated from there to the point that we're talking about monopusher chronographs and tourbillons, and we're developing our own movements and things like that. And I guess in the space of 5 years, things got real very quickly. And it went from the kind of thing where we thought we'd go and just have an interesting side project for all of us, and if it didn't work out, we'd have a lot of Christmas presents for the next 20 years, to somehow entering mainstream popularity. And now we're on, I think we've released reference number 50 for our 5th anniversary. Yep, we do about 5,000 to 7,000 watches a year, depending on the year and depending on models we're releasing. It's become a big thing. It's not a small garage enterprise anymore. So
No, absolutely
in fact,
not.
yeah, we just moved offices actually, and we basically have the entire floor of an office building now, which is kind of scary. And that's just Malaysia. That's not the watchmaking part. That's just the that's just design, operations, customer service, fulfillment. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Listen, can you start with a little bit of your design language? Because you're one of the very few designers that has gone out and, rather than do something retro inspired, like really created your own design language. Like, how would you characterize this design language?
That's a tricky one, because when you say not retro inspired, I actually differ. I think there's a sort of 1930s, 1940s, 1950s aesthetic going on there. The whole kind of I think what was referred to as like postmodern aerodynamicist, that kind of thing. I don't know the specific name for it, but it's like basically the start of the jet era, but modernified a little bit. And a lot of people have come along and basically said, your stuff looks like it's out of Tron, which, okay, to some degree it does. And basically there's a sort of 1920s Art Deco meets Tron overarching feel to the design, which is not the intention. I should preface all of this by saying I'm not a designer by training. I'm not a watchmaker by training. But I mean, that said, I design everything, and I work on a lot of the watches myself, especially when stuff comes back in service. I mean, it is a little bit more than something self-taught. I guess it's a bit more of an obsession than an interest. And what we've done with the design language is basically try to make something that's both, on one hand, reductivist, in the sense that we try not to have too many elements in there for the sake of having more elements, but at the same time, it's distinctive. And I think in a weird way, it's actually been around for long enough that there is some consistency to it. And when I say that, I want to say that the 1701 was not the first watch I designed, wasn't the second, wasn't the third. I mean, I started designing stuff back in 2001, 2002. And by the time we got on to actually making some of this stuff, I'd had things produced before for other companies. I did some design consulting work. I had stuff produced for ourselves internally as custom commission pieces. By the time we got to 1701, what we liked in terms of design, what I liked in terms of design, I think is fairly well established, right? So we have a few design principles we work to. Obviously, the expansion of the lugs, that sort of flare of the lugs, whether it's well, I don't know how to say this without giving the game away a little bit, but basically what you see in the existing watches is not exactly how it's always going to be. There will always be a recognizable element of flare, expansion. I don't know what you want to call it. Just that sort of exuberance to the lugs to give the case basically some continuity of volume with the strap. And curved end straps, that's a thing for us because it just looks weird to me to have a straight bar on the end of a curved case. Radial symmetry. At least for the majority of our models, we don't always have radial symmetry. There's some models which are actually outright asymmetric, but that's fine. We try to make delineations in the chapters. There's also the idea of layering and texturing, and all of our watches actually they present three phases. So there's the normal daytime phase when the light is oblique and square on. Tilt it to sort of 20, 30 degrees against a bright background, and then you've got an inverted face. And then obviously you have the nighttime luminous signature as well. So basically, watches are continuously dynamic. It's very difficult to actually photograph them because your left eye and right eye can see very different things. I mean, for instance, one eye, depending on the angle of the watch, can see the reflected face and the inverted face, and the other eye just sees the regular face. And that presents something which it's very surreal, and it's very ethereal. It's very light and airy, but you can't capture that in a photograph because the camera's only got one point of view. So I like to have this dynamism to the design in the sense that you don't get bored with it. It's not the same watch all the time. Depending on what environment it's in, it reflects a different aspect of its personality. And I guess the same is also true with the way we choose to do our case finishing with these polished bezels, whether the concave or the convex. Same thing with the lug surfaces. A lot of the time, we play around with the proportions so that the watches appear larger or smaller than the actual diameter suggests. That's partially because we want to offer things that are comfortable in different wrist sizes, but not sacrifice wearability. And at the same time, it's also so that we can offer things that have a certain visual presence, but don't sacrifice wearability. And that's quite tricky because we have 38 millimeter watches that feel like they're closer to 40, 41. And we've got 40 plus millimeter watches that feel that they're closer to 38. So it's an interesting element to play with, I would say.
But I think also there is a feeling to Ming watches when you put them on too. Like the way
how would you describe it as an owner? I mean, this is interesting to me because how would you describe it as an owner? I mean, I have my idea of what it's supposed to be.
It's always very fluid. Just like how you're saying, there's always a bit of dynamism. There's always a little bit of almost visual transition, going from left eye to right eye, going from angle to straight to side on. Because it's constantly changing, it sort of suggests to you in your mind that as you wear it, it's really organic, and maybe that is where the sort of futuristic aspect to me comes out, right? Because when I think of very futuristic things, I always actually think of Terminator. Like, you remember the liquid metal?
The liquid metal.
There's a little bit of that sort of feeling too.
Well, the dials give you that feeling sometimes as well, right? Because they have that once the sapphire dial does the inversion, it's like it goes into this sort of liquid phase. I agree with that. I mean, they're dynamic pieces. But at the same time, they're not. I want to say they're not ornate for the sake of being ornate.
Yes.
Right. So the decoration that's there is there as part of the support to the dynamism, for want of a better term. It's to basically add another layer of something, visual something, whether that's texture, whether that's color, whether that's an extra depth layer, for want of a better term. I also think that they need to feel like there's a little cognitive dissonance in some cases. Like, they have to be heavier than you expect or lighter than you expect. And I think with the 19, all of the 19s, especially on a strap, they're a lot lighter than you expect, both visually and physically, because the case is in titanium and you've got two sapphire box crystals. The 1709 is heavier than you expect. It's just like has this nice, solid, hefty feel to it. And
which, given how thin it is a little bit of a shock too, I think.
Right. And it's something which there are some watches where I feel like it looks light, it is light, sort of, not great, or it looks heavy, but it's very light and it feels kind of hollow. I don't want to have that feeling. You want to pick it up and go, okay, there's some cognitive dissonance going on here, but in a good way.
Yeah, it's engaging. It's challenging you a little bit.
Exactly.
Let's get into the details then.
Mhm.
Let's start with this.
1905?
1905. What was it? Because the 1905 is a long-standing series, and this model actually closed out the series.
So the 1901 was the second watch we did after 1701, just to show that, I guess, to avoid being pigeonholed into only making one kind of product at one kind of price point. So both 1701 and 1901 were our idea of like daily wearing hand wine, but very different interpretations of it, because the 17 was an entry-level piece below $1,000, which honestly was a commercial mistake, but we learned. It was designed to a price point. The 19 series was not. It was designed to an idea and then priced, which is two very different things, because we basically said we want to have a really interesting movement. We want to have a really interesting case to show off the movement, something special on the dial side, and all of those things came together to make a very unusual piece. 19 series was, as you say, long running, because we had the 1901s, time only, hand wine, long power reserve. We had 1902, which is world time with automatic micro rotor, rose gold finishing. We had two piece unique 1903s. There was a piece unique 1901, a piece unique world timer, and 15 of the 1905s, which basically, at the end of the run, we did an inventory, so that we got some spare components left over, and let's make something. And at that time, we were also experimenting with setting ceramic luminous material, so the high ceramic stuff, into sapphire crystal. And 1905 actually is one of the earliest iterations of that, where we have the luminous material set into a sapphire crystal with a black coat on the back. So depending on the angle, again, it sometimes looks like a mirror, sometimes it looks like perfect inky black with no reflection. I mean, to me, it's like enamel, but a very modern interpretation on enamel,
Yes.
the effect of enamel.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
But
and this is why we like working with sapphire so much, but there's no way you can set ceramic luminous material in enamel with that level of precision, certainly not that level of repeatability. So it has the micro automatic from the 1902, obviously without the world time function. Cases in grade 5 titanium. The top and bottom crystals are sapphire box glasses with anti-reflective coating on both sides, but there is reflection. It's off the dial. It's absolutely intentional, and it's totally meant to be there. It's honestly, we didn't expect it to be as popular as it was, and we thought, like the rest of the 19s, it would take a long time to move. But by the time we got around to 1905, I guess the market was different. We were a lot more popular than when we started, and people had a lot more trust in us than when we started. And we're very appreciative and always surprised by that. So the 15 watches we made that we thought would take 6 months to sell, we could have made 400 of them based on demand.
Do you think you would ever resurrect it?
No, because when we say we're done with something, we're really done with something. I mean, I don't believe in resurrecting stuff for two reasons. One, because there's just so many things that we want to make, right? There's so many things on the board. I mean, you see a blurry couple of images behind me, but for the most part, I would say we have enough watches out to 2026, 27 at this point, assuming continuous pace of release, even accelerating a little more. But there's like basically about 130 things that we could possibly make at this point. We're not going to make all of them, but that's a lot of things.
I remember visiting you back in 2019 in Malaysia, 2019 or 2020, something like that.
No, it was 2019 because it was pre-pandemic.
It was pre-pandemic, yeah.
Yeah. When you came, we had 3 boards. We have 5 now. We had 3 boards that were partially filled. We have 5 now, and they're all filled. And now I'm like looking for space for a 6th and 7th board, because it's getting busy.
Well, you need a new office, man. You need another floor.
We just had a new office. I mean, we moved from the place that you visited us in to 10,000 square feet now.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
So, thank you. It's getting big.
Hey, with the 19 series.
Yep.
Did that also coincide with the release of your Universal Bracelet?
It kind of did. The Universal Bracelet was originally designed for the 19 series. It's a derivative of the bracelet we used on the Abyss and the H41. The Abyss had a fitted end link. It was in steel, different clasp. The H41s had the Universal Bracelet in titanium 5, with, I think, the first time anybody's ever done a curved quick release spring bar on a bracelet,
Mm.
which basically allows this bracelet to fit any of our watches which take a curved strap, without modification, without hitting the case, all of that. I mean, it basically fits like a strap. And I think there are some certain references as well to those, beads of rice bracelets back in the, what must have been the 30s, 40s, that kind of thing, with a straight bar and like the little grains of rice, which is, it's kind of nice. This one is it's a more modern, more solid take on that.
Yeah, it's actually a little reminiscent of old Cartier bracelets. Old Cartier bracelets, though, they were more in just rows, whereas yours has
Yeah,
a
they were
nice sort of
bricky.
curvature
They were
to it.
bricky, and ours has a sort of curvature that echoes the curvature of the case as well.
Yeah,
I
think
mean,
it's
interestingly, what you have there, that bracelet will fit on the 1709 as well.
because I think like I actually kind of regret that I put the bracelet into the auction. I should have kept the
I'm
bracelet.
sorry, we're not making any more of them.
I know. All right.
Yeah,
Well, it's okay. The new owner will appreciate it.
There's a second generation one that's coming, but the second generation one, because the design language of the links now fits the new design language of the cases, and we had to match the end link and everything else as well to, visually, it won't fit the ultra thin. So it'll fit everything but the ultra thins.
I see. Is this the one that is on your tourbillon? Is that the new design language?
No,
I know the tourbillon bracelet's a little different too, right?
No, it's not. The tourbillon bracelet was a special one-off thing that we made, that we can't, honestly, it doesn't make sense for us to do mainstream because that bracelet's too expensive to produce. It's in titanium 5. Each of the 5 links in one row, they articulate independently. So there's 2 pivot points and, sorry, 3 pivot points, counted wrong. There's polished anglage on each link. Yeah, just don't go there. It's very expensive. It's a very expensive bracelet to produce.
I mean, it looks expensive. I saw it on James, waitlisted, because we hang out in New York every once in a while. And he's always wearing a Ming. And one day he came in with the tourbillon, and I was like, man, that is incredible. It was such a beautiful piece of work.
So I think thank you. I think it's been displaced because we just delivered his 21 Series 2, the Argent Hook chronograph. So of late, it's sort of, taking a break. Okay.
Well, I hope to see it again sometime. Shall we move on to the 19 series? What was your thinking about the 19 series? Yeah. Oh, sorry, 1709. 1709.
So the 17 series has also been a very long running one for us. In fact, longer than the 19 series, because we started with 1701, the first hand wind thing that put us, I guess, on the map a little bit. Followed up with 1703, which is the GMT in grade 2 titanium with integrated bracelet or other fitted end bracelet. What I think of as integrated. We had the 1706s in various iterations. 1703 also had a few iterations. 1706s in various iterations, and the 1709 in also various iterations that closed out the line. 17 series has always served as the entry point for us, where we're very, very conscious about trying to keep the prices as low as possible and trying to give you as much stuff as possible. So with 1709, that was, I think, about the limit of what was reasonable. So we developed a new module that basically modified an existing Solida 330 to give you independently adjustable hours on the hour hand instead of having a GMT. That required several iterations to get right, and the latest version, the production version is solid. We have, on top of that, figured out a way to do I would say a possible clou de Paris guilloche pattern, but obviously at this price, it's not going to be a traditional rose engine guilloche because it's just not possible. But it is. We basically start with a very, very high precision tool steel die, which is CNC. That's finished, and that provides the master blank for all of the dials that are stamped on top of that. And the coloration process is something else, because normally metal dials are anodized or painted. The ones that are anodized, I mean, you can keep the definition, that's fine, because there isn't really a thick layer of paint that goes on top of it. Painting kind of dulls the acuity quite a bit. So we went through a whole bunch of different combined techniques to try and get this one to retain as much acuity as possible. But both the blue and the burgundy dial, those are not anodizable shades. So to try and get the color we wanted was actually very tricky. I mean, it seemed straightforward, but as we discovered, it wasn't. On top of that, this is the first 17 series where we've got again ceramic luminous material in the crystal, which is another unfortunately very expensive thing to produce, but the effects are really nice. And basically, especially with this one, If the lumen is fully charged, you get some light falling down onto the dial, and it's more than just glowing lines in the dark. You got a little bit of depth as well going on, which we quite like. Lastly, there's actually a change to the case on this one. It's not the same sort of vertically milled case. That's how I want to describe it. The previous cases were vertically milled. If you look at a 1709, there's a line that runs from the bottom of the lug, twists through about, I think, 110 degrees, curves up to the side of the lug, twists again in a different plane, and then curves to the side of the case flank, and then goes down to the other lug. That's not easy to do. It looks easy, but it's not.
I mean, it's almost lyre-esque too. It's like a modern interpretation of a lyre lug as well.
It is. I mean, the 19 series had lyre lugs.
Can you talk a little bit about ending series? Like, what makes you want to close out a series?
That's a good question. It's actually something that we've never been asked. I mean, I think generally we end something when we get to the point where there's a clear successor to it, and there's a clear next generation that is dominant across the rest of the product line. And then when we have one product that doesn't quite make sense, it makes sense to just retire that product at that point, because it's an outlier compared to the rest of it. There's no design consistency. I think some brands do a very good job of maintaining designs for a very long period of time. I personally think that you run the risk then of having a whole portfolio of things that are not so harmonious. I like to have a harmonious portfolio, and basically there'll be some in transition, there'll be some representing new design, some representing old design going out of phase, but basically everything evolves together. It's not just from a visual continuity design point of view, but also as we evolve and we make more pieces and we do more constructions, the sophistication of engineering, everything just gets better. So rather than updating an old design and having to retool and basically start all over again, effectively we use the same amount of resources to refresh an old design as we would for a new design. We might as well just make a new one, and also because there's so many things we want to make, we kind of have to choose where to spend our resources, basically, whether that's project management time or R&D budget or whatever the case may be.
Would you say that there's the brand has grown with the customer has grown with the brand, as in they came in for entry-level watches, but now they're confident and they're also financially able to afford some of the more complicated pieces?
Yeah, for sure. No question about it. I mean, we've had people who came in, bought 1701s and went silent for a bit, picked up an ultra thin somewhere in a diver, and then came back and bought a monopusher. I mean, we've also had a new wave of customers just basically coming in at the high end and buying monopushers outright. So I think there's an evolution both in terms of customers at the low end moving up. There's an evolution of customers who are just coming in at that level because now we're making things that are interesting to them. And there are customers who will continue to be at one or the other. So it's actually very hard to peg what a typical customer for us is like. I don't think we have one. I don't think there is such a thing.
I mean, I think that there's definitely people like Ming's appreciate these things because it's not
the evolutions or the differences or what do you think?
The object itself, it is a very sophisticated thing, and the more sophisticated your own taste is, the better you are able to appreciate it. It's a design language and a watch that really rewards people who are paying attention to it, I think.
Thank you. I think our challenge, honestly, my biggest challenge is like, how do I make something that's immediately attractive and pops, but at the same time, it's not a one-trick pony. For somebody like you say who has the experience, they need to be able to look and go, oh, okay, so there's some refinement there which we didn't expect. We look a bit closer and there are little, not quite Easter eggs, but I mean basically all of the little things that you'd expect that maybe you don't appreciate until you've seen a few watches.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations on all your success. It is very well deserved. And really, let's close this out I would love to hear what's next for you.
Okay, well, next I'm going to see whether I'm going to have any luck with your auction. So hope you have all the best with that. And I can understand from an entrepreneur's point of view that raising funds for the next venture is always challenging. And sometimes you got to make hard sacrifices, man. I don't envy you, but it's great that there's new opportunities to move on as well. So all the best.
Thanks, man.
I'm not gonna say what I'm interested in. Otherwise I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot.
Okay, no worries.
But I mean, for us, this year is going to be a year of consolidation. By this year, I mean 23. So we actually had 2 launches for the end of 22 that we put off because everybody in the industry is having these massive supply chain disruptions, delays, whatever, and it's really unpredictable. You know, it's not nice to tell a customer X number of months and then it just changes arbitrarily. And the thing is, we don't even know because it's like, okay, delivery is next week. Then one sub-supplier tells our main construction partner, it's like, oh, sorry, you know, this component is delayed. When? We don't know because their raw materials delayed. And then the whole thing just, you know, snowballs, right?
Yeah.
So we want to close out this year by finishing all the deliveries we've committed. We're focusing on delivering rather than trying to launch new stuff. The launches will start from next year. On the immediate horizon, we have a new world timer. I'm really hoping that for next year we're not going to have any more delays with raw material, and the ultralight will happen. New Universal Bracelet as well, as we talked about a bit earlier. There's a few other surprises. I won't entirely give the game away, but on the longer term horizon, we are developing our own movements as well. And
congratulations, that's amazing.
Thank you.
It's like hearing about a new baby, basically, when you say stuff like that.
Yeah, except it's not a 9-month gestation period. It's quite a lot longer than that. I mean, this has been in the movement has been in process since before the pandemic. We've been granted a couple of patents already. It is not what you would expect, and it turns out that it's complicated enough. We basically have to do a cut down version of the movement as a proving concept thing, which will be a whole separate other thing on its own before we launch the main one. So it's going to come in stages. It's going to be a little bit more advanced than people expect.
Would it be something that's modular that you can add additional modules onto?
It's not really modular in that sense, because by the time you get to this point, even if you make it modular, you're effectively redeveloping so much of it that it doesn't make sense. It has to be fairly finely balanced in terms of power output and torque requirements and things like that, because we're pushing things quite a bit.
Well,
that's all I'm going to say.
Typical for you. I would expect no less.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right,
cool.
Ming, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And best of luck closing out the year. I think it's super admirable that your focus now is just like, let's get deliveries done and then let's start with a clean state. I really hope for the best for you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Good luck for the auction. Cool.
Thanks, man. You take care.
You too.